Today, I have my venture capital, future of food, and next big investment theme hat on today, and I am giddy with excitement. I have the distinct pleasure to interview Dr. Sandhya Sriram and Dr. Ka Yi Ling, stem cell scientists and the founders of Shiok Meats in Singapore, a cell based clean meat company, the first of its kind in Singapore and Southeast Asia. And they were also the first scientists ever to isolate the stem cells of shrimp. These two ladies have been described as two crazy Asian women who decided to quit well paid jobs, have no clue what they were doing, and would most certainly fail. Well, I don't know who out there listening is thinking the same thing that I am, but I would take that bet any day. And I'd want to be friends with those women. And I'd also want to be present when they ring the bell at the stock exchange when Shiok Meats one day is listed as a publicly traded company. Welcome, Sandhya and Kai to the Shot Caller podcast.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here. And thanks for those kind words. But it's only been 2 years since we started this company, but it feels like 10.
Kind of like 2020.
Yeah, it feels like, yeah, exactly. And I think Kai will agree with me on that point.
Definitely. Time has flown by really quickly. Thanks for having us, Shannon. Very happy to be here.
I'm really super excited. Before we get into the story of Shiok Meats, I always like to start a little bit with how you guys grew up as women, because you two tick all my boxes, especially just personally and for the Shotcast or for the Shot Caller podcast. You're women, you've got diversity, you're coming from a different region than I'd say a lot of new hot venture deals have come from in the past, which I think is very exciting. And you're scientists. I mean, it's just a trifecta of awesomeness. So tell me, each one of you, a little bit about did you want to go into science from an early age? Who were your sort of early influencers there? And who are your mentors as well? And the mentors could be science-based or not science-based. Maybe just somebody in your family that said, you can do anything you want to do. So I want to hear about that.
Sure, I can start off. So, yeah, as far as I remember, I always wanted to be in science. I always wanted to be like a medical doctor. That was kind of what I grew up, studying biology and physics and chemistry at the end of the day. But then, of course, life takes a different turn eventually. So I am originally from India, was born there, but was brought up in the Middle East. In Dubai, in Kuwait, in Abu Dhabi.
Oh, wow.
And then moved back to India to do my high school, undergrad and master's. So I ended up doing microbiology in undergrad and biotech in master's. So couldn't get into medical school due to a lot of issues like, financial burdens and, family not being able to support as much and so on. But eventually wanted to stay in science. So said, okay, let's go into the research side of things and, still stay in science, but not be a medical doctor, but maybe a PhD doctor in the future. So that's kind of how it started for me. And I think the love for science was always there. It's still there. And I don't think it's ever going to die for me. So went ahead with that. And then 2009, I would say, is kind of a big break for me when I moved over to Singapore to start my PhD. And that led me on to realize that I'm a great scientist. I like science. I like doing the science, but I actually don't want to be on the bench doing actual science. I want to be able to take the science out of the lab, put it into the actual consumer's hands, and how do you make that happen? And it didn't happen. 1% of the research that we are doing over the years, over the billions of dollars that goes into it, actually gets converted into a product that humans and animals or the world can use. So kind of quit being a scientist about 5-6 years ago, and then went ahead and dabbled a bit with entrepreneurship, tech entrepreneurship, then moved from being a scientist to a business development manager. And I think 2018 was the perfect time to say, okay, that's it. I have decided that I want to be an entrepreneur and start a company. I think my greatest inspiration throughout my life have been three people. So one is my dad. Unfortunately, lost him at a very young age, but he was always the guy, like, what he said, you can do it. You can do it, go for it, try it. Otherwise, you'll never know, that kind of an attitude.
Magical words to a young
Yeah,
person.
exactly. And second is my mother. I think her willpower and grit and strength that she has to go through life the way she has, as a widow at very young age
Yeah.
with a single daughter in school, it was very hard for her. Life was super hard, but I think the strength that she has is where I get my strength from. And third is my husband, whom I've been dating from when we were 15. And
Wow.
yeah, it's like high school love. We've been together for more than 20 plus years right now.
Wow.
And I think he's again this person who's always said, go ahead and do it. You have to try it. You have to go ahead and do it. If you fail, it's fine, but at least you've tried it. So he's been the biggest support system in terms of me moving forward. Just I think one point to add, my greatest mentor in life at this point is Ryan Bethencourt, who
Ah.
is a vegan entrepreneur, as you know, investor,
I
runs
think
a
that's
vegan
how I
pet
came
food.
across you guys, actually.
Right.
I think he posted about you and my eyes lit up.
Right. So I met him about, I think, 5-6 years ago. And ever since, we've been having crazy conversations over the phone and in person. And I think Shiok Meats happening also he was one of the biggest factor for it to actually take place. And he was our first investor as
Amazing.
well.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
yeah. So yeah, Kai, go ahead.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's great to hear about Sandhya's story again, and I always feel inspired by what she does. So for me, I guess I've always loved science. I knew I loved biology. Probably started off when I read about Dolly the sheep, where they could clone
Yes.
a sheep, where I was like, wow, this is really cool. You could actually, divide and replicate something in nature, and that was really interesting. That was kind of a start for me into stem cells, and I knew I really wanted to do research when I started to do a research internship in A-Star in Singapore during my pre-university years. So when I was about 15, 16, and I knew that, I really like the hands-on side of things. I really like science, and biology was the thing for me. I didn't really like physics or chemistry, but biology really clicked in it. And then when I went to university in Wisconsin, Madison, that was where stem cells is really everywhere there. And I really got into the stem cell side of things, and where I met my first few mentors, Jamie Thompson, the scientist who isolated human embryonic stem cells. He's a fantastic mentor, very hands-off, and even as an undergraduate, I felt really appreciated. He gave so much time, and there's always new ideas when you talk to him, like anything is possible. So I felt very inspired. And then when I came back to Singapore, I did an internship with Davor Salter and Barbara Knowles. They are also very great people in stem cells and very inspirational as well. And I knew that I loved this side of things about learning about development and stem cells. And like Sandhya said, how does this work? But we study this, what happens to it? For me as well, it felt like I just studied it, and I write papers, and not everybody understands it, and it doesn't really feel relevant for most people. So I was searching around for something else that I could put my skills to, and I enjoyed. And I've met Sandhya while I was doing my postdoc in Singapore, and she was sharing her experience about being an entrepreneur and being in business development. And at that time of point, I didn't really think I would be starting a startup. But when she came with the idea and told me about Shiok Meats and using stem cells to make shrimp meat, I was like, wow, that really clicked. Because I never thought, even though I was always into stem cells, to use stem cells to make food. And that was the point where I was like, this is something that really resonated with me, because I love to eat. And I personally, I'm not a vegan or vegetarian. I enjoy variety in my food, but I feel like I am creating a negative impact on the earth when I eat these other meats. So if I am able to do something with my skills, I should definitely do this, because the wool is really, most people are still meat eaters. We all try to reduce what we eat, but at the end of the day, it's hard for everyone to become vegans and vegetarians. And we need to provide a good source of meats that we can eat, but not harm the environment we're living in, and also our health as we're eating it.
Yes.
So
well,
that was great.
it is a challenge, and I think it is important that there's different options. So you have the plant-based, and then you have the cell-based, and I think together that's power for the consumers, right? It gives them many choices about how they want to eat or get their food that are both more sustainable than what we have going now. So I think it's great that you guys took that on. And Sandhya, I know you're a vegetarian, that's right?
Yes, I am. I'm a vegetarian by choice. I was brought up a vegetarian.
Yeah.
But I think as I grew older, I was intrigued by meat and seafood, of course. So have tasted, but never felt that it was right. Always felt guilty about it and never really enjoyed the flavor per se. I think that comes from the guilt of eating it.
Yeah.
And I've stayed a vegetarian ever since. But for example, my son and my husband eat meat and seafood. So I do have a lot of friends and family who do that. But that I think is a bigger motivation for me to kind of get these people to start eating healthier and better. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I went vegetarian in January, and it's been a process of slowly cutting out first this, then that. And fish has been the last bastion of my challenge. And I must admit, I do love seafood. I really love seafood. So I can't wait for this product to be available, because I know I will be a big buyer of it. So you guys both, well, Sandhya, you mentioned it, and I think Kayi, you sort of were alluding to it, the entrepreneurial path. So this is a big part of, well, my passion, but also what I'm trying to inspire any woman out there to think about being an entrepreneur. Not everybody wants to be, so, and that's okay. But I wanted to know, in the universities, I know, Kayi, you spent some time studying in the U.S., and Sandhya, you've had diversity through India, the Middle East, and Singapore. Were the universities, are they starting to shift a little bit of this discussion, like what you said, Sandhya, taking ideas out into the real world? Are they starting to talk about this with grad students and training a little bit, giving you access to these conversations? Just out of curiosity.
Yes and no. Why I say that is, yes, they are getting people to start thinking about starting your own company, spinning off technologies, and thinking out of the blue, thinking out of the box, sorry, and then kind of taking something forward that you have worked on and actually making it commercial. But at the same time, all of the universities, research institutes, this is very typical in Asia, Southeast Asia, is where the universities want to hold on to the patent and the IP and the technology. And they just want their students and staff to spin off and start a company. But it's still, it's a situation where you're still stuck to the university, but you're trying to be independent. And then it's confusing for the investors and the entrepreneurs and everything. So that's very, very typical in Asia.
Okay.
That's why, consciously Kai and I decided to not spin off or not have this as part of the university or not have it as part of our previous job. So we took a clean break and we said, okay, let's start from, base without any ties to any organization or, whatever it is, university or institute. So that's why I say yes or no. For me per se, I don't like the spin-off model because I think over a couple of years after doing the spin-off, the entrepreneurs slowly start losing interest because it is not 100% their own company. It's still
important.
tied to that university. There's too much politics, there's too much paperwork and so on. So this is given my experience in the past and what I've seen. But Kai, what do you think you've seen in the US, for example?
Yeah, I would say, Madison had a lot of biotech companies, but I wouldn't say the culture is as strong as now because I graduated from my PhD about 5 years ago. And back then I didn't feel as in the buzz of startup. I mean, it was common for people who graduated and then joined the startups, but and like Sandhya said, a lot of them were spin-offs, like Carry On. Wisconsin has a great, IP office, and a lot of them, it's actually seems a lot easier than what we see in Asia for them to move on into companies. But at the same time, a lot of these startups who start off from academic institutes, they spend a long time as being an academia where you wait for grants and then you fill certain milestones. Whereas in the startup, we have a lot shorter time frame, and our goal is to commercialize. So it's hard for these researchers to change their goals or mindset once they've been in the academia for quite a long time. I think it's a lot more common as we were in Y Combinator. We see a lot of young undergrads even who finish at Stanford in the Bay Area, and they just start off. A lot of them are tech companies, not say deep tech, but the culture there is a lot stronger. And I also agree with Sandhya that a spin-off is really difficult to manage. I mean, it's great because you get all the resources you have from the academic institute. But then at the same time, then the academic institute will take from you and expect you to give in return. And it becomes difficult to separate in the long run. And a lot of the people who manage and who started a technology, they will still hold their position as professors or, directors in the institutes, and they're never really full-time in the startup. So that also makes it difficult because really Sandhya and I do this 100% of our time, and there's never enough time for us already.
Well, it seems to me if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you really can't have a safety net. I mean, if you've got one foot in another area, which is your fallback, you may not be as bold as you need to be at the time that it's required.
That's very true. I mean, I have personal experience doing that. So I've started 2 startups in the past before Shiok Meats, but I always had my full-time job. And I learned it the hard way. My first startup suffered because of that. And I decided at some point to quit the partnership and, leave so that my full-time co-founder can take it forward. And the second one, honestly, didn't really require me to go full-time. The company is doing fine, but depends on the business, what you want to do. Depends if it's a venture business, if you're looking to raise, let's say 10 million, 100 million, 1 million, whatever it is, no investor is going to put money into you if you're not in it 100%.
Not at all.
Because then they're going to be like, why should I invest in you when you have a safety option?
Exactly.
So I think it's it's culturally in the industry, it's frowned upon having a safety net. Also, I don't know if the drive is different for me specifically. When I did my first startup, I was working 100% both in my full-time job and my company, but you can only sustain it for so long. I did it for 2 years. I was burned out at the end of it.
I'm glad you said that.
And entrepreneurial ventures requires a couple of years. You can't just let it go in like 1 or 2 years.
Yeah. I think it's important to be realistic about these journeys because they do require inhuman time sacrifices. And at the end of the day, we are human. So at some point, either we have to get balanced with our life or, the business does well, but we don't thrive personally or physically or mentally or any of these things. So, and I actually think that women may be setting examples in that field of being more willing to say, no, I need to have a bit of a balance. I'm not going to give everything in my sanity to the startup. I mean, you're going to give it a lot, of course, everything that you've got. But anyway, that's interesting topic.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think between Kai and me, this is something that we keep telling our team a lot. And between the two of us also, we're like, yes, Shiok Meats is everything that we eat, breathe, sleep, but it is not the end of life,
Yeah.
So we do have a family, we do have a husband, spouse or kids or, whoever, parents, brother, sister, whatever it is. You need to still have them and you need to still respect them and spend time with them, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And work-life balance, I think, especially in Asia, there is absolutely no work-life balance.
Yeah.
And given COVID for the last more than half of the year, none of us have had a work-life balance. Like there's no start, there's no stop to when
It's
we
just,
work. We are always working. So we literally talk to each other, and I tell Ka, why don't you take this weekend off or take the Friday off as well? And she tells me, I think you need some sleep. It's a
Yeah.
constant thing that we keep telling each other when we realize that we are overworking, or we feel that, okay, the other person needs some time off and needs some time to relax and spend time with their kids or husband or whatever it is. And we tell the team as well, work smart, don't work too many long hours.
yeah.
Work what you need to do and be effective when you're at work, so that you don't have to carry work home, and you don't have to come in extra hours or on the weekends to make sure you hit the deadline and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's very powerful to be efficient and then have cutoff times for yourself, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we found that if you take time off, we actually feel more refreshed and we have new ideas to work on. Whereas, especially now with COVID, we're always online, our phones, our computers, it's always on. There's always people pinging from everywhere because we're always online. So we really need to make a conscious effort to turn it off. And sometimes I feel bad about it, but if I don't turn it off, then at some point I'm not going to be able to work anymore.
That's very true. It's very true. Are you guys able to get out and go for walks and things, or is it still quite strict in Singapore at the moment?
Actually, Singapore's opened up. I would say we are almost back to normalcy. Like,
Okay.
schools have opened in June. We're allowed to dine in restaurants, a maximum of 5 people.
Okay.
Work-wise, yes, if you can work from home, please work from home.
Yeah.
But if you need to come into the lab, for example, with our scientists, then they need to come in. But make sure you wear masks, make sure you have 1 meter distance. So there are very specific rules that we
Yeah.
follow. I think it's worked because right now we're having positive cases like single or double digits per day. That's it.
Okay. Great.
And none of them are symptomatic also. Most of them are asymptomatic. This is
Oh, wow.
voluntary tests that they've done, or it's, tests done among workers and certain industries and so on. So I think we've managed it brilliantly. And the great thing is we've managed to contain it. So no travel allowed for sure. So we are stuck inside Singapore, but I think we are one of the most safest countries to be stuck in right now. So
Yeah. Well,
we're quite
good.
glad about it.
I'm glad to hear that. Switzerland's got a relatively similar story, although we do have many countries around us, and it's always controversial over not wanting to shut one border off, and it's a little tricky there. But the Swiss have not gotten most of them have not gotten nuts over wearing masks and things like that. They are fairly pragmatic. But we have our weak spots here and there, so we're trying to manage it. But life does feel ish back to normal, sort of. Yeah. Okay, so let's go into the exciting Shiok Meats story and the bigger plant and cell-based meat marketplace, because it's massive, and I actually suspect that your story has been a heck of a lot easier to tell because of coronavirus, or people can envision why these things are so important. I'll just read out a few statistics from some of the research. There was a Dutch startup, Mosa Meat, who claims that a single cell sample can create up to 10,000 kilograms of cultured meat. Maybe you guys will say whether that is also your findings. The production process requiring 99% less land and 96% less water than traditional livestock agriculture. Cultured cells double every few days. Thus, it could be brought to the table much quicker than, I guess, the 2 years or so it takes to roundabout grow a cow. And then the investor sentiment, specifically, I guess, more the venture capitalists, because they're the ones that have access to this space at the moment. Cultured meat startups have raised over 125 million since 2015, and investment grew by 85% between 2017 and 2018. I'm sure when we get the 2020 numbers, they will be even bigger. And then, of course, you have the high-profile backers like Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Google co-founder Sergey Brin, who helped to fund the first synthetic meat burger ever grown in 2013. So so it's exciting. The space is exciting. I am an animal lover. I have to say that's a big reason why I went veggie. Not because I mean, the health benefits I've been looking to post that decision, but for me, the industrial farming is wretched. I cannot stomach it. I feel so sad that because of all of our slick packaging in our big grocery stores, most consumers have no idea about the horrors behind the meat that they're eating. So for me, that's a big driver. But tell us a little bit, in the listeners as well, about the science and technology of cell-based meat and the stem cells behind it. Just a bit to kind of give people that background. I know you probably tell this all the time, but it's I guess important for people to really understand what it is you're doing and how you're doing it.
Sure, I can start off and then Kai can add more on the technology per se. I think specifically at Shiok we work on crustaceans, so shrimp, prawn, crab, lobster. So I can speak for those animals because I would say the technology and the technicalities are a bit different between land animals and sea animals. So specifically when you talk about sea animals, it's more to do with accumulation of heavy metals, microplastics in the oceans. When you come to farm shrimp per se, it's just disgusting. It's been grown in dirty water, sewage water, overloaded with antibiotics, fungicides, cleaned with bleach, and then sent off for human consumption. And I have firsthand experience of seeing these things being done to animals, and that was kind of the biggest push to start working on shrimp. With regards to what we do at Shiok is the base technology for every cell-based meat company is very similar per se, where we isolate a particular stem cell from a particular part of the animal. So when you look at shrimp, once you deshell a shrimp, what you have is 100% muscle, which is your protein, which is the meat that we eat. So we isolate muscle stem cells. And stem cells have this amazing capability of growing in numbers outside of the animal's body as long as they're kept in a conducive environment that's very similar to the animal itself. So we are kind of tricking the cells to think that they're still inside the animal, and they can grow in billions, trillions of numbers as long as you provide them with the right nutrition, temperature, pH, humidity. And in the animal's body, stem cells, these muscle stem cells form muscle fibers, and the muscle fibers is the meat that we eat. So we are exactly doing that. The thing is behind the whole cell-based meat industry is, why do you have to grow an entire animal, feed it the feed that humans can eat directly, plants, grains, and so cereals and so on. Wait for it to grow 2 to 5 years and then slaughter it and then eat only parts of it.
Yeah.
Why not just grow the part of the animal that you want to eat rather than growing the entire animal? So that's the whole, I would say, idea behind the cell-based meat industry. At the same time, no need to use antibiotics, no need to worry about heavy metals, mercury poisoning, for example, no need to worry about microplastics. It's done in a super aseptic, clean environment that's meant for food, and that's how clean our food should be at the end of the day. So that's kind of where the thought process comes from, and Kai can talk a bit more about the technology itself and how we have to overcome a lot about, why it's not happening so fast. I think she can add a bit more points on that. Yeah.
And just in between, to be very clear for those people listening, all those issues that Sandhya pointed out are things that we are ingesting in our bodies.
Yeah.
So even if you are not particularly concerned with the farming aspect of it, you are eating animals with microplastics and lead and raised in many cases in sewage. And as I understood from your fantastic TED talk, India is the largest exporter of the shrimp. So people shouldn't just think they're getting their shrimp fresh out of the Pacific Ocean when that's mostly not the case. That's accurate, right?
Yeah, actually more than 70% of the shrimps that we eat nowadays are farm shrimp.
Yeah.
Only about 30% is wild caught.
Yeah.
And among the 70%, about 70% of that comes from Asia Pacific, mostly India, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, and so on.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. And now on to the exciting science behind it.
Yeah, I think Sandhya has shared about, how the technology works is quite similar between aquatic and land animals. But the benefits that we see are similar, that it takes a lot faster to grow. We need less input to get the same amount of meat because we're growing what we eat and not the rest of it. So there's actually a lot less food waste that comes out of it because we only make the parts we eat. And then, like you said, we need a lot less land, so we don't need to clear as much of the mangroves, which is what in Asia a lot has to be cleared for the farms to be set up. So it's a huge impact on the environment and the biodiversity. But other than shrimps, we also look at crabs and lobster, which actually they are not farmed. There are lobster farms, but those are actually just hosting areas where after they catch and fish from the sea, they just have it as a area before they distribute it to all the customers. So for crabs and lobsters, you can't really actually farm them at the rate that we're consuming them. We're not allowing enough time for the animals to grow and replenish the ocean, and we're kind of pushing them towards extinction, which is really terrible. Which is a huge case because fishing and examples, when we throw the nets for shrimps, for example, every kilogram or pound of shrimp we catch, there's actually 20 kilograms of bycatch that come out of it. So other animals, because the nets are very small, you catch all the larger ones as well, and it takes time to take them out. But by that time, when fish and sea creatures are out of the ocean, they unfortunately die, and then they get thrown back to the sea.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful. God.
Yeah. So with this technology, we can actually avoid all of this and provide a healthier impact for, meats that we can grow, because we don't need to worry about the ocean contamination or global warming as well, which is leading to a lot more viral infections that impact the shrimps. As the temperatures go higher, there are more viruses that grow, and then they impact the shrimps.
It really, I don't know, it really pisses me off, this short timer opinion of a lot of people out there, that we can just ignore all of these different factors and that it won't come back to roost at home for all of us. Rising ocean temperatures, bigger storms, more fires. And I just think every government out there should be looking towards the future and how we can have food sustainability for its people. So for me, it's just, we should not be wasting our time protecting domains which are just not serving their purpose anymore. But I guess I'm wading into the political side of it, which sometimes I do. So I apologize. How different is isolating stem cells for crab and lobster from shrimp? Is that relatively similar process, or is that also quite a different technology?
In some ways it's similar, in other ways it's not. So for example, the main difference that we would expect, or that really matters, is where we can find these stem cells. And shrimps are a lot more simple compared to crabs and lobster. Shrimp, it's really 95% muscle, and it's clear cut where the muscle is. For crab and lobster, they are a mix of tissues. So to isolate them, you have to be able to separate out from the other tissue types in there. So that's that. And also what you feed them is very important. So, for the animals itself, they feed on different things. So for the cells itself, they also need different nutrients or amounts to grow as well.
Okay, let's explore that a little bit, because I have a kind of a business colleague who we also have venture hats on, and she said, what's the sort of I don't know if the term is feedstock in this way, but when you're growing the cells, what are they grown in? That's interesting.
Yeah, so cells, when we do this, it's basically feeding them digested nutrients. So a mix of amino acids, sugars, fatty acids, vitamins, and proteins, things that basically we consume, but because they don't have a stomach or intestines to do it for them, we have to basically digest it for them.
Right. Okay. And those ingredients, I guess those are sustainable type of ingredients. They're not, you don't need some huge amount of, I guess I'm trying to look at the sustainability throughout the process.
Yeah. So basically you can get them from any food ingredients. For us, because we're in this for sustainability, it's important for us to be able to source these nutrients from sustainable sources, and definitely from plants.
Right. And what about the energy side of this? I imagine these things will get more efficient as the technology gets further down the road.
So currently, so we call it cell culture media, this liquid nutrient broth that we feed the cells.
Okay.
That Kai was talking about. You know, it's similar to feedstock, but it's called cell culture media.
Okay.
And this media, at this point, most of the cell-based meat companies, unfortunately, what we use is pharmaceutical grade, because stem cell technology is an offshoot from healthcare. You know, the cell-based meat is an offshoot from healthcare. So it is a mix of proteins, carbohydrates, fatty acids, and so on, but they're all chemically synthesized.
Okay.
So they're not the best to be edible or eaten for a long time, and they are extremely expensive because they are made. They're not out of nature, they're actually made in a lab.
Right.
So what every cell-based meat company, inclusive of ours, is doing is trying to swap out all of these chemical ingredients with plant-based extracts.
Okay.
So, for example, can we get carbohydrates from potatoes? You know, I'm just giving random examples.
Yeah.
Can we get proteins from soy or pea? Can we get vitamins from, you know, vegetables? Can we get it from extracts? Can we get it from leafy vegetables, minerals from there? For us, there's two problems. One is, where do we source these ingredients from? And can we make sure that every ingredient is sustainably sourced? Is the first question. Second is, who is willing to partner with us for a long-term commitment of making sure the supply of these ingredients are there for us? The supply chain is a big question. And I think during COVID, all of us have realized that it is something that we need to think about a lot. So for us specifically is, why should I get pea protein or soy protein from America? Can I get it from Asia somewhere? If I get it from Asia, is it sustainably sourced? Are the workers being paid correctly? Is it from a company that we can believe in? You know, it's such an intricate web of questions that we need to get answers to. So I think, you know, walking into a food company or a company that sources food ingredients, we can easily go buy a bag from them. But at the end of the day, the question is, do I want to use that bag of ingredients? You know? So I would say that is also adding a lot to the time factor for all of these companies to be able to get to that scale where we can produce enough and actually launch the product in the market and say that it is 100% sustainable.
Exactly.
You know, we don't want to just claim randomly. We want to make sure that it is sustainable and every ingredient that goes into this product is sustainable.
And I'm sure Ryan is in your ear, making sure that you're thinking about all those things, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, also you need something that's affordable, right? You can't keep selling meat that's $1,000 a pound or a kilogram. Maybe, yes, the elite, the extremely rich can buy it, but at the end of the day, you want to sell it to, you know, normal consumers that eat meat and seafood every day and have it affordable. And that's how you reach that mass number that you want to reach to disrupt the industry.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's just going to be this select 1% of the population that's able to eat it.
Yeah. I heard a TED talk with a gentleman, and I'm sure if I said his name, you'd know him, but I've forgotten it right now. I'll link it in the show notes, but it was Price, Taste, and Convenience. And he was talking about the plant-based industry. I mean, he did also mention the cell-based industry. But it is interesting. And I had some questions here on your supply chain, just because with the venture capital kind of hat on, you, not only are you trying to perfect your technology, trying to get your profit margin to a place, or eventually, right, getting your financials to a place where you can be profitable and scale, but you also have to be part of building out a supply chain up and down the whole system. And that
Mhm.
is hugely time intensive. And I imagine that you need to build coalitions around that.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I say we are a cell-based meat company, I feel like saying everything else
Yeah,
also around it.
exactly.
So, I kind of tend to break cell-based meat companies into four pillars. One is the cells itself, like the stem cells in the cells. Second is the cell culture media, the ingredients that goes into it. Third is the bioreactor and the equipments that we use. And fourth is the consumers, the eventual buyers of your product.
Yeah.
I think cells, media, we're trying to sort as much as we can. Media, again, like I mentioned, ingredients, it's all about talking to food companies and feed companies and trying to explain to them that we're not putting you out of business. We're
Yeah.
actually giving you a better business to support. We're going to buy tons and tons from you, but we
Yeah.
need to have a long-standing partner.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that you follow practices that go in line with sustainability and human resources and all of that.
And you're giving them a
Then,
glimpse into the future as well. If this
yeah,
is what's coming,
exactly.
get
And
ready for it.
it's, running this company for 2 years, each and every day is about consumer education as well as industry education.
Yeah, I can
We have
imagine.
realized that it's only a small number of population that understands the technology and the need for the technology. The rest of them need a lot of education and light being thrown upon as to why they have to start thinking about food this way and why they have to start making better choices and so on. Coming to the bioreactor equipment side of things, again, because this is again from the healthcare industry, everything is super expensive. Everything takes time. One equipment takes about a year to make and get delivered to you and get
Wow.
installed. And we
Wow.
don't have that type,
Yeah.
that time. So we have been speaking to medical companies, trying to make them understand that, hey, step over the line and come to the food industry. It's huge for you, all of these companies. So yes, we have formed teams with other cell-based meat companies, but we have to do our part individually also. And when 20 or 30 companies tell the same thing to one bioreactor company, they realize that yes, now's the time that we have to take that step and come forward and do it. So I know I keep saying this a lot, but I don't think Shiok Meats would have been a success if we had started it 5 years ago. I
Yeah.
think we started it at a time where it was right to be started, where the industry was a bit more matured. I salute my hats off to like Memphis Meats and Finless
Yeah.
Foods and Mosa Meats that started way beyond time,
Yeah.
where there was nothing available for them.
Yeah.
Literally, they had to do everything in house. I think they've paved a good way for us, and we
Yeah.
are kind of
Absolutely.
riding on that and trying to get forward. Yeah.
Well, Google was kind of benefited from. I think I read they were something like the 13th search engine to come through Silicon Valley. But by
Right.
that point, they really knew what the warts were, knew what the advantages were. You
Right.
gave me an idea. I think somebody needs to start an eBay for the bioreactor and cell-based meat. Get some secondhand equipment out there for you guys.
Definitely. I mean, I'm game for that.
Good. Anybody listening? There's a business side hustle for you to start.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So what about are you thinking about this yet? I know it's probably not the most pressing, but the packaging.
Yes. So I assume that this podcast is going to be published after a couple of days.
Yeah.
So as part of that, I can mention that we actually just closed our Series A.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yes, we're definitely going to talk about that.
so this
Congratulations.
is the
Woo!
first podcast where we're announcing it. So
Yay!
we've
Shot
just
caller
closed
podcast.
12.6 million US dollar round for our Series A. And as
Yeah.
part of that round, we actually have a sustainable packaging company. So yes, we have been thinking about this from day one.
Okay.
We're like, yeah, we can make an extremely sustainable product, but will it be packaged in plastic, at the end of the day? Because it is going to be a frozen product.
Yep.
So we can't put it in like paper or
Yeah.
cardboard per se. It does, perish over time. So yeah, we've been thinking about this. So we have a Japanese company called Toyo Seiken that is part of our Series A. And we are actually looking to work with them on sustainable packaging. So
Cool.
they have been doing it for beverages and other types of food. They have been doing it even for seafood. So we are pretty excited about that. And
Nice.
yeah, I would say, between Kai and me, we think about everything. Like Kai I mean, Kai, do you want to talk about how you think about plastic even at the lab scale?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot harder in Asia, but we've been looking how to recycle our plastic, minimize and use reusable filters instead of single-use disposables. Every bit counts, and unfortunately, in the R&D scale, we have to use some disposables, but we try to minimize it as much as possible. And it's great that our team members are thinking about it as well. And we try to encourage it in our day-to-day lives as well. One of our gifts last year at our anniversary party is the reusable cutlery. So we're very proud to have our own.
Nice. Well, it's great. And I really want the listeners to both appreciate all the thought that goes into building a sustainable company from the ground up, but also to be aware of just how difficult it is, that even if you want to be sustainable as a company, you may just simply not have the resources for it. And I don't even mean money resources. I mean actual physical resources where you can use them in your business. And so there's many challenges on this front. Many companies out there that are addressing those challenges, and I think packaging from an investment perspective is another huge opportunity that's adjacent to the space that you guys are in. I think everything related to food, and my partner Tamara and I are, hopefully going to be doing some exciting things around that space. But it's both a problem, but an immense opportunity.
Yeah, I think, we have had enough comments from a lot of people and a lot of questions asking us, like, how do you truly say you're sustainable, And at this point, is any company 100% sustainable? No.
No.
Are you 80% sustainable? Great. Are you 60% sustainable? That's great as well. Are you even trying to be 10% sustainable? That itself is a big push to get there, Because we have been asked questions, for us to obtain our stem cells, we have to get it from an animal. We can't just get stem cells out of the air.
Yeah.
So we need access to an animal. Unfortunately, because we're working with seafood, when we take the animal out of the water, they do die. But it's 4 animals versus 40 billion animals that get killed on a daily basis,
Yeah.
So we have been asked questions like, oh, you still kill shrimps to take out stem cells. Are you truly sustainable? I'm like, compare the numbers, taking stem cells out of one dead animal is nothing compared to the trillions that you kill and consume.
Yeah.
So the question is, I mean, there can be people out there in the world always questioning you as to, are you truly sustainable? Are you truly ethical? Are you truly healthier, and so on? I think at this point, you have to think about comparisons rather than just it standing alone and trying to prove itself to be the best.
Yeah. And like you said, it's very unlikely that you and I are going to turn the world vegetarian and vegan. Now, maybe 50 years from now, we'll be eating our words, and that will be the case. I mean, I don't know, but we are not going to impact both the life of the animal, the planet, and our health unless we give alternatives to what most of the population want. And that's just the reality.
Yeah, it is called the food for the future for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Did you have something, Kai? I wasn't sure if you were. It had said something.
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, I just agreed. And I thought it's really true because, I mean, for food, it's really hard for anyone to only eat one type of food. I mean, if you look at our meals, we eat 3 meals a day. I don't eat the same thing every day. We need variety, and that's basically what we're comfortable with, I guess.
Yeah. And I had read, I think you did an interview with the South China Morning Post that said that the current lab-grown shrimp meat, now maybe this has come down since that interview, was around 5,000 a kilo. The goal is to get it down to 50. Is that kind of where you guys are at? Is that still the story, or?
Yeah, we're well on our way to make sure that it's $50 by next year, and that's
by next year.
Yeah, so that's why we're looking to commercialize in 2022. If even everything goes okay.
Yeah.
That's our aim, to kind of commercialize in 2022, and by then we want to be at the $50.
Okay.
And Kai, do you want to talk about how it becomes $50?
Yeah, so I guess the main cost of the technology is what we feed the cells, and like Sandhya we've mentioned, we're using pharmaceutical grade feed nutrient media, which is really expensive because it's always been made for a small volume medical purpose. We have several projects there we're working on, one with the pharmaceutical company where we're working on a plant-based, cost-effective media, and they're able to produce it for us. So we're really excited about that. And that is, one of the targets to bring down the cost to $50 per liter. And then the other partnership, yes. And $50 per kilogram from $20 per liter of the media. Yes.
And
then
go ahead.
Yeah, and then another project which we actually announced in the media is working with another cell-based startup in terriculture in Japan, where they have a novel technology in producing these nutrients for the cells to grow. So that's another way we're trying to target the problem by having the cells provide their own nutrients. And the buyer. Yeah. So, and definitely in-house, we're looking at our own solutions, thinking out of the box, trying to find different food nutrients where we can feed ourselves.
Sure. And that's, again, part of this whole value chain. You need other people to help you be successful, don't you, at the moment? Other people that are part of this whole grow new sector, new space. Tell me a little bit about your production and distribution kind of goals. Are you do you envision that you'll have bioreactors in, let's say, strategic cities in America, in Europe, in Asia, and then you'll distribute locally? Or do you think you'll just have one massive hub in Asia and then things get shipped out from there? What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, so for us, our target market is Asia Pacific. So that's where we've been concentrating. And that's one of the key reasons for us to be in Asia as well.
Yeah.
So we're definitely looking at a decentralized manufacturing supply chain per se. So we're looking at setting up multiple manufacturing plants in different Asian countries over the next 10 years. So that's kind of our plan. Targeting, again, Asia Pacific. So one thing, again, comes to sustainability is, do I want to make it in one part of the world and fly it all over or ship it all over to the other part? That adds carbon footprint. So we don't want to do that. So we want to keep it regional to an extent. Of course, we can't set up a manufacturing plant in every city and every country that we want to be in.
Yes.
So at least, a particular radius or a diameter that we can operate with. For Europe and US, actually, we don't want to really set up manufacturing at this point. We're thinking of doing licensing out of the technology. So that's kind of the way we want to go.
That makes sense.
I think a couple of thought processes behind that is the consumption of crustaceans is much more in Asia Pacific compared. I mean, I would say at least 100 times more in Asia Pacific.
Wow.
Just to give you a number, in the US, per year, about $500 million worth of shrimp is consumed. In Asia, or let's say China alone, about $10 billion worth of shrimp is consumed. So you can see that, a couple of zeros are different between the West and the East. So
I can see why you would focus there.
Yeah, so we would focus Asia Pacific. But of course, we're not negating out the fact that the Westerners also eat, seafood, and they like environmentally friendly products and so on. So the idea is to license out. I think one thing that I heard, I was speaking with Nick from Impossible Foods, and he was talking about why they haven't yet set up a manufacturing plant in Asia, even though they are in Hong Kong and Singapore. They still ship over items from the US. The reason being that they're only doing Hong Kong and Singapore. It's too small of a market for them to set up a facility here. But if they run into more countries, and their plans is to expand into a lot more countries in Asia, then it makes sense to actually set up a manufacturing hub here. But numbers-wise, sustainability-wise, it works better to ship right now rather than set up here. So I believe in that. I actually, we have done some number crunching and we've seen how that works out, and it actually makes sense. So the idea would be initially for the US market, maybe shipped from here. But eventually, if we see that it's a huge market that makes sense to set up manufacturing, then we might in the future.
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, especially with such stark numbers. And as well, you guys are all really early in this this new field, and it makes sense that you kind of cut your teeth on any production missteps or any learnings that you're certainly going to have in this process before you start just popping up, bioreactors all over the world. So that makes a ton of sense. And it's good. I just like that the listeners hear this thought process, because I think most people out there aren't privy to these kind of discussions. And that's one of the things I'm trying to achieve, especially I'm trying to get to more women, although my podcast is open to everybody. I have a daughter and 2 boys. I certainly would never want to exclude boys from the topic. I just find that they somehow find their way into these conversations more naturally than women do, for whatever reason. So we're going to change that. On the production side, one of the things that I think Corona showed a lot of countries, and I'm sure your research will show this, is the vulnerability to getting food. For instance, the Philippines has to import so much food from outside the country, and when ports get shut down because of a pandemic, I mean, you can very quickly have a very big problem. So if you eventually have big markets, like I'm assuming the Philippines is a pretty decent market, Vietnam, being able to have a food source that you can produce on shore is probably quite attractive to the governments as well, I would imagine.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I can speak for Singapore. I mean, Singapore is a country that's the size of a city.
Yeah.
We have 40 kilometers east to west and 25 kilometers north to south, but we have a population of almost 6 million.
Yeah.
And we import 90% of our food. So given that these numbers are kind of alarming, and COVID has definitely, kind of pushed that for us, simple things like during the lockdown, when I went to the supermarket, I couldn't find a certain brand that I wanted, which I was used to eating. Yeah. But I knew it was because of the supply chain issues and the logistics and so on. But Singapore, I think, has put all its money, effort, time, and, a lot of consumer education into why locally grown food is so important. So they actually came up with a mandate called 30 by 30, which meant increasing the local food production from 10% to 30% by 2030.
Okay.
So that's a huge number. I mean, we have undertaken too much, I think, but I think Singapore can do it once it sets up its mind.
I'm sure.
So they have been supporting, vertical farming, vertical aquaculture, cell-based meats, plant-based meats, all of it to kind of add on to that 30% and get to that number. I think we are well underway to definitely reach that number in the next less than 10 years. I think all other countries are slowly starting to, realize that.
Yeah.
And, interestingly, Singapore is the first ever country to come up with a regulatory framework for cell-based meats. So they actually have a framework that is published on the Singapore Food Agency's website, which is kind of the equivalent of FDA. And they are so for it. They support us. I mean, even in our Series A, we have, Enterprise Singapore, which is a government statutory body, invest in us. So it's exciting to see that they're actually putting money where their mouth is. And it's just not a random, propaganda that they're talking about, but they're actually doing something about it, and we can see it right in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
So I think that's very exciting for us. Yeah.
Singapore is impressive. Temasek is a huge investor in technologies worldwide that would, I'm sure, ultimately benefit the people of Singapore. And I'm impressed by what they do. I mentioned to you before we started recording that I visited a year and a half ago and absolutely loved it. And the fact that they're looking at the regulatory side does show how forward they are. And whether I'm American, I live in Switzerland, and my husband's European, but whether the West likes it or not, the shift is happening to the East for many different topics. And you guys are just an example of innovation that's coming out of the East. And if you are a government that is looking at how you can help small businesses to grow and scale and become large businesses, solve big problems, and give regulatory assistance and guidance, you're going to be ahead. And if you're a government that's not doing this, is holding on to the old polluting industries, trying to continue to mine or open up mining and natural resources just to save a few jobs for a few more years, you're not going to be great. And this is Singapore is a great example. I guess I'm I'm agreeing with you. Fantastic. Okay. I'm conscious of your time. We're coming up to the hour. I want to ask you guys a couple fun little rapid fire questions at the end. So I'll ask you just both the same question. What is the best investment you've made in the last, let's say, 6 to 12 months for under an equivalent of $100? And it could be anything.
For me, I think it's, buying more non-disposable stuff at home, like not using single-use plastic as much, taking bags for shopping per se, rather than using the supermarket bags. I think that's been more of a personal investment, and teaching my son as to why it's important. Yeah. So
cool.
I think for me, during the stay at home, I bought a mini toaster for one person. So I think it's great. So I feel like I can just make enough food for myself, bake some little fries, little pizza. So
cool.
It's been great.
Very good. And okay, the next one is, what book do you most recommend to people or buy for people as gifts? If you have one. This always stumps people.
Can I say that I haven't been reading as much? I just don't have the time.
We would understand. We definitely understand.
So off the top of my head, I actually don't have any recommendation right now.
That's okay. That's okay.
I think for me, it would have been the book Clean Meat by Paul Shapiro.
Okay.
It's a great introduction to the whole alternative meat scene, how people got started, cool. It was a great read.
I'll read that.
Oh yeah, now that Kai mentions it, that was probably one of the
that
books
was the one you introduced
that
me
I read
to.
fully, probably. Yeah. So
there you go. See, you were the one that introduced it to her. Oh, good. See?
Yeah.
I like to get these ideas. That's quite a selfish question, because I want to know what do people read that's really, resonated with them, that they give it as a gift or whatever. And then I just wondered, how familiar are you guys with the Henrietta Lacks story? Have you read or heard that story?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we have worked with those cells as well.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I know it's a completely different topic, but stem cells are. I read that book for my book club, and I was just gobsmacked by both the reality of her life and the money people made on her cells, and her family didn't know about it, and then the fact that her cells are, I think, still the only human cells that keep reproducing. Is that still correct?
It's one of those immortals, we call it immortal cell lines. Being used, I would say, everywhere in research.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't yet know why her cells are the only ones that keep reproducing. Is that still true?
I mean, there are other cancerous cell lines that are, I would say, immortal to that extent. But I think, HeLa, we call it HeLa cell line. So based on our name. I think it's been extensively used because it's available in a larger quantity. We have a lot of pharma companies that you can buy from. And it's one of the most characterized, and a lot of papers have been published on it. So people tend to kind of stick to that so that they can use the same protocols and the same experiments to kind of prove it. But there are other cancerous cell lines that can grow immortally as well, but those are the most established ones.
I thought that was that was my first foray into the topic of stem cells, so that was kind of gave me some background. Okay, and very lastly, without giving any investment recommendations on my behalf or you promoting anything on your behalf, for those of us out there who would like to maybe some way be part of the next series round of fundraising, what's your thought on when you guys need to go back to the market to scale up for more money?
I think we are okay for the next 2 to 3 years. So we don't intend to raise at least for the next 2 to 3 years. But I think as a startup entrepreneur, I think Kai agrees with me. We never stop raising.
Exactly.
We are always pitching and we're always speaking to investors, especially if you move ahead, ahead of Series A and B. Investment decisions take more than a year. And investors like to know you beforehand. They want to see how the company progresses, what milestones you're hitting. So I would say at this point, we've already started speaking to investors who want to be part of our next round, but they know that it's only going to be after 2 to 3 years, but they still want to be aware of what's happening with the company.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Well, I'm
I mean,
raising my hand for that.
thank you. So
I'm
I would
super
say we'll
excited.
get on to full-on fundraising mode probably mid-end of 2022.
Okay.
But for the next 2 years, we're
Yeah.
still happy to speak to investors and people who are looking to invest
Good.
in this field and kind
Good.
of make them more aware and make them more excited, if that's
Good.
possible.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm going to be a cheerleader for you guys and share. I've already shared the
Yeah.
TED Talk that you did with all my family, and I'll keep sharing the articles. And I want you guys to be successful in whatever way I can help or add value. I'm here to do that.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you.
You too, guys.
Yeah, it's been great.
Go knock 'em dead. I think what you're doing is fantastic, and I can't wait to watch you be super successful. And thanks for coming on the show and talking to all of our listeners.
Of course. Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
Shannon.
bye, ladies. Have a great day.
Thanks.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.